And it's going to be awesome. So let's just go ahead and get going. Start in Matthew chapter 6. That's where we're going to be today. Matthew chapter 6. And we're going to be talking about ambition. All right, so we're in this church-wide, year-long series about the life of Jesus. We've already gone through the Gospel of Mark. Now we're in the Gospel of Matthew. We've been trucking along for a couple weeks. Down here, we've been focusing in on the Sermon on the Mount, which is one of the longest discourses that Jesus has recorded from his public ministry. And he speaks on like 17 different kind of topics about how to live righteously, live as citizens of this upside-down kingdom. Okay, and so that's where we're going to be today. And we're going to be in Matthew 6, talking about ambition. And to illustrate this, October 2nd, 2001. How many of you were not alive at that time? Anybody? Yeah, awesome. October 2nd, 2001. I was a freshman in college, and I wrote a poem, because that's what I did in college. I majored in writing poems. I mean, come on. That's the easiest way to get a degree and then a job ever. Like, what did you do? Oh, I was a mechanical engineer with a second major in biochemical engineering. I wrote poems, and I studied old poets, and I read books, and I took Shakespeare at 8 in the morning, and I cheered for essay tests. You know, I was just like, yay, we get to write. It's awesome. It was awesome. And I took like an entire minor's worth of outdoor education classes. But anyway, October 2nd, 2001, I wrote this poem called I Can't Wait. And it starts out like this. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's a pretty terrible poem, but the idea is pretty awesome. It starts out, I can't wait to be a daddy, to feel the pride of a father by holding you, child, in my arms. And then it goes on. All right. But this is what? 16 years ago. All right. This is when I had this ambition that I wanted to be a daddy, and then boom, here I am now with 3 girls that look amazing and that are amazing, and yeah. So, but this one right here, she was -7 when I wrote that poem. I hadn't even met my wife at the time. Yeah, that was still 5 more years to go before I even met her. All right, so this was a great ambition of my life. All that I have really ever wanted to be is a daddy. I've wanted to be a good daddy, and lucky me, I got 3 girls that I get to raise and bring up, and I get to be their dad. Like, what? That was like the greatest ambition of my life. And here it is fulfilled. And it's so fun, especially when you're like, I don't remember you eating that as it's grinding down into my carpet at 5 a.m. But it's still fun. It's still worth it. It's still amazing. So here's what I want you to do, though. In your notebooks, I want you to answer this question. What have you always wanted to be or try or pursue? Not what do you want to be when you grow up, but like what have you always wanted to be or try or pursue? Think about that and just write it down real quick. So look at that. Look at that thing. Look at that ambition that you have. And I want you to ask yourself this. Is that worth delaying heaven for? Like when you think, man, I want Jesus to come back. I want to go home, but I want to do this first. That was me. Like, I want Jesus to come back, but I want to be a daddy. I wanted to delay heaven so I could have kids, and I did. Sorry. I mean, heaven's coming soon. I mean, that day is coming soon. I can't wait. But that's my question for you. So our key verse today, I want to look at this. This is Matthew 6:33. Jesus says this in the Sermon on the Mount, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. This is one of those key phrases in this entire passage that we're looking at. So we're going to key in on this for the most part today. Matthew 6:33, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Let's pray and let's get going. Jesus, we are so thankful for your word, and we are thankful that you have given us space to carve out of our weeks to just sit and rest in the goodness of God, having your word proclaimed over our lives and into our hearts. So I pray that today would be just an amazing time of transformation and illumination and understanding of how good you are to us. Jesus, we love you. In your name, amen. All right, guys, so let's look at this word to seek. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Seek means to seek out. It's to desire to possess. It is an intellectual pursuit, but it's also like a motivation towards action. So when we think about seeking first his kingdom and his righteousness, that doesn't confine itself into like a classroom setting where if we understand God or theology better, then okay, that's part of it. That's not the totality of it. If you don't know God better, then it's going to be hard to have a better relationship with him. Excuse me. But as you are seeking him, as you are seeking to understand him, it is also creating within you these motivations towards action of what does it look like to seek him with your life. So in order to seek, you have to know what you're looking for. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about treasures. All right? So we talk about treasures. Ambition is the pursuit of things that we treasure. Ambition is the pursuit of things that we treasure. All right, so let's look back in this same chapter, Matthew 6. Let's go up to 19. All right, so go back to Matthew 6:19. This is what Jesus says in this passage. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So if ambition is the pursuit of those things that we treasure, how do we make that choice? Because before us is, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Instead, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. What does that look like? What does that mean? How do I live that out as a 13-year-old? Like, what does that look like? You know, the thing for us is that worldly ambition has this strong fascination for us. It's kind of hard to make that choice. It's like, yeah, I know I got to store up treasure in heaven, but what does that even look like? How do you put that on a college application? How do you use that in your bid for student council? You know, like this strong fascination we have is things like the American dream where we start from nothing and we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and now we're like the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. Or we have this strong fascination to like Ivy League is the only way to go. Or like we want to go pro in whatever it is that we're trying. Like we have this desire to pursue these things that we treasure, but these are earthly things. And in this passage, we see that it ought to be easy to decide which to collect because earth treasures are corruptible and therefore insecure. The contrast of these treasures on earth and these treasures in heaven, more importantly, implies a contrast of values. Not like dollar amount, but value. What are we seeking first? Whatever the disciples placed as his or her highest value is a gauge of the condition of the heart. So the righteous value that we have as followers of Christ, as citizens of this upside-down kingdom, is God himself. The rewards are important, but the greatest treasure in heaven is the Father. So a question of value truly becomes a question of vision. Now I want to unpack this part, okay? Let's look at this. This is verse 22. Matthew 6:22. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? So what this is saying is that just as our eyes affect our whole body, so our ambition affects our whole life. Ambition is the pursuit of things that we treasure. That affects everything that we do. Ambition, what it does is it makes you choose where and why to go to college. Ambition makes you choose what organizations to run for or to be involved in because you look at some things and you're like, hey, you know what? This has value to me. I want to be a part of that. I want that as part of my story. And I feel like I'm looking at your faces right now and you're waiting for me to make that little turn that says, but if Jesus isn't supreme, then you need to quit everything you're doing and never pursue Palm or band or hamburgers or anything. You know, like I feel like you're just waiting for me to drop that bomb on you. And can I just say, I am so sorry that you're anticipating that because the gospel is so much better than that. Ambition makes us choose these things. But this is a conversation about treasure. So I want you to write this down in your notebook real quick. If your eyes are unhealthy, you'll ask, what's best for me? If your eyes are unhealthy, you'll ask, what's best for me? If your eyes are healthy, you'll ask, how can God use me the most? And I'm not talking like physically, if you have like glaucoma or something, then all of a sudden you're going to be like, what's best for me? What it's talking about is this vision, the way that you see life, the way that you see these pursuits, the way that you look at treasure. If your eyes are unhealthy, you'll ask, what's best for me? But if they're healthy, you'll ask, how can God use me the most? This question is going to drive your ambition. It's going to affect the pursuit of things that you treasure. And it can even transform what you treasure. If you get to a point in your walk with Christ, in this upside down kingdom, where you start to think, how can God use me the most? That is going to fundamentally alter everything that you care about. It's going to rearrange this hierarchy of what matters to you. Of the things that you value most, suddenly those become strangely dim when you start to ask instead, how can God use me the most with X, Y, and Z? So let's look at what we treasure then in verse 25. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothes? Okay, so a little bit of context here. Jesus is talking to an audience in first century Israel. Okay? He's up on a hilltop. He's talking about what it looks like to live in the kingdom, to live righteously as a follower of Jesus. All right, so his audience, this blew me away. When he says this, he says, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink or what you'll wear. That's a great verse no matter what century it's read and proclaimed. But when you go back to the original audience, I want you to hear these otherworldly living conditions and physical concerns that they had. This is what it says about them. Tenement cubicles, which is where they live. You know, they built like their like apartments in the wall around Jerusalem, that kind of stuff. All right, it's not like our house is down on 111th. You know, it's like these tenement cubicles built into the wall. And this is what he says. They were smoky, dark, often damp, and always dirty. The smell of sweat, urine, feces, and decay permeated everything. Outside on the street, it was little better. Mud, open sewers, manure, and crowds. In fact, human corpses, adult as well as infant, were sometimes just pushed into the street and abandoned. These are the living conditions of the people that Jesus is saying, hey, don't worry about what you're going to eat or drink or what you're going to wear. They're thinking, are you kidding me right now? There's like dead bodies outside my front door and I can't do anything about it. What are you going to say, don't worry about what you're going to eat or drink? I can barely afford to get the firewood to cook my food. Like, are you kidding me right now? That would be a shocking thing. And for us, we have such abundance, we don't need to worry about these kind of things, right? When we say, Mom, there's nothing to eat, there's just ingredients to make things to eat. You know, we get mad, it's like, I don't want to open a soup can. Like, just pour it into my mouth. You know, like we have abundance. This isn't a concern of ours. We don't live in these conditions, all right? We don't live in conditions like these today. By the way, this is late 1800s New York. This is kind of a visual for you of what that would look like. Our concerns are not the same in material, but they are in principle. Then how do we have these healthy eyes to see these things that we treasure, like food and drink in our bodies, in our context, right? We have central heating and air, and we have garages, and we have pantries, and sometimes we have guest houses with other refrigerators. You know, we have these kind of things. So in our context, what does it look like? All right, so let's do this. This is going to be fun. Food. Let's look at food first. The way that we treasure food is we treasure the way that it makes us feel better. That's one of the ways, right? When you see one of those molten lava cakes from Sonic, I don't care what is going on in your world, you want one of those. Because it's just like this big old fat old brownie with all kinds of stuff just oozing out. And it's just like, oh, yeah, give me some more of that, you know? And then there's going to be people that are going to tell you, you can't eat that for breakfast. Well, maybe. You know? We love the way that food makes us feel. We love putting sugar on our grape nuts and sugar in our tea and sugar in our sugar. And we love putting sugar on top of our cotton candy and sugar on our fried bacon and sugar. We love that stuff because it feels good and we love the taste. And this thing is not full of water. It's full of Dr. Pepper. All right? I love it. I just have to have it. I treasure that. In my flesh, I treasure that. But there's another way that we treasure food. And this is going to be a fun one too. We treasure the calories in it. It's like, oh, this only has 300 calories. Looks like I'm eating full today. We treasure where it's sourced from. Is this a locally sourced, cage-free, grass-fed, non-GMO cow? Does it make gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free chocolate milk? Does it? I heard a story one time that this lady was yelling at a guy at Whole Foods because she was demanding grass-fed chicken. Chickens don't eat grass. But this is the stuff that we treasure, right? Like every label is like, I mean, there's a box of Cheerios in there that says flavorful, gluten-free. Yay! There's no gluten in there. I can have it because I treasure it. I mean, some people have allergies and it's a necessity, but some of us are just hippies, man, and we're like, I need some free-range Cheerios. You know, like we treasure that kind of stuff. That's what it looks like when we treasure food in our day and age. It's like we care where it came from. Is like locally sourced okra. Who cares? Fry it up and eat it. Is this locally sourced hog? I don't know. Are you raising a pig in your backyard? No. Like, let's get over that. Like, that's what it looks like when we treasure food today. When we treasure drink. You remember when everybody flipped out about the unicorn frap? And everyone was saying how bad that is for you? Come on. Like, that's like both sides. It's like some of us were like, it looks like treasure. I'm going to drink that? Well, I don't know what you do with it. It's like, it's a spoon and a straw and there's glittery sprinkles all over it. But there was another side that was like, oh, you can't eat that. You can't drink that. It's so bad for you. It's not locally sourced unicorn, you know, or whatever. Or how about this? Have you ever wondered why Yeti has the market share of brand loyalty? This is a Yeti cup. Why do I have this? Because everyone said I think I should have it. Because it's cool. It's a stainless steel tumbler. It keeps your drink cold for a long time. You can put this in your car and light it on fire. There'll still be ice in that cup. Okay. But I have one because I bought into that as treasure. So if Yeti is so big, why isn't Coleman or Igloo? They do the same thing. Why isn't Ozark Trail? They do the same thing. It holds your liquid in place. So it's not just like all over your shirt like you just happen to have one of those prom dates where they just are sloppy eaters and it gets everywhere. That was me. Spaghetti was always like, you know. But that's what happens when we treasure these things. Is like we care about food and we care about drink in some unusual ways to where it's like, you know what? I love this cup that holds my drink so much. I'm going to wear a hat and I'm going to have a cooler and I'm going to spend $10 for a straw because it's a Yeti straw. Is it not going to stay cold from here to here? You need the Yeti straw to keep it just blisteringly cold in this much space. Come on. That's what we treasure, guys. But the thing is here, if we have our eyes on Jesus, then food and drink can just simply be good. When we treasure Jesus, the things that we worry about, do I have the right brand of cup? Are people going to mock me for drinking non-locally sourced unicorn sprinkles? When our eyes are on Jesus, that stuff can just be good. And then we can have molten lava cake for breakfast every now and then. Because I'm an adult and I can make that call myself. I don't need Facebook to tell me what not to eat and what not to drink. I need Jesus because I love him more and everything else is just good. Dr. Pepper and cereal, I like that. But I love Jesus. Let's look at our body as treasure. I want to read this to you. A British male teenager tried to commit suicide after he failed to take the perfect selfie. Danny Bowman became so obsessed with capturing the perfect shot that he spent 10 hours a day taking up to 200 selfies. The 19-year-old lost nearly 30 pounds, dropped out of school, and did not leave the house for 6 months in his quest to get the right picture. He would take 10 pictures immediately after waking up. I mean, that's your problem right there. Bedhead. You're never going to get a good shot with that. You should have seen my pro this morning. Frustrated in his attempts to take the one image he wanted, Bowman eventually tried to take his own life by overdosing, but was saved by his mom. I was constantly in search of taking the perfect selfie, and when I realized I couldn't, I wanted to die. I lost my friends, my education, my health, and almost my life. He first started posting selfies on Facebook at age 15. After receiving online comments about his face, he became obsessed with looking perfect. Dr. David Veal, the psychiatrist whose clinic treated the teenager, said the issue was not one of vanity, but a mental health one, as Bowman suffered from body dysmorphic disorder. When we treasure our bodies, this happens. We become obsessed with perfection. Not possible. You are beautiful the way you are, ladies. Fellas, you are rugged and handsome the way you are. Even if it makes you feel weird when mom tells you, your youth pastor's telling you so. Whoop, double weird. Okay? But here's the deal. When you have your eyes on yourself and your body is treasure, this kind of thing is possible. When you have your eyes on Jesus and Jesus is treasure, you understand that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And if God himself is willing to dwell within this mess right here, then who cares if Instagram roasts you? You have to first see how we treasure these things in order to make the comparison that we saw in verse 19 of treasures on earth versus treasures in heaven. And now that your eyes are open to this, let's get back to the key verse, Matthew 6:33, and use our eyes the way we're called to use them, to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. All right, so a Christian's ambition is to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. To seek first this kingdom, write this down, to seek first his kingdom is to desire as of first importance the spread of the reign of Jesus Christ. It's to desire as of first importance the spread of the reign of Jesus Christ. That is what it looks like to seek first his kingdom. Jesus becomes first in all things. Jesus one and only, not Jesus one of many. Jesus is as of first importance in our hearts and in our eyes and in our vision and in our pursuits and in our ambition, because our true ambition is to seek this first. Seek first doesn't mean once. If we live for the kingdom first, it doesn't mean we don't play football. That's what Mark Ragusan said as we were brainstorming this. I loved that. If we seek the kingdom first, it doesn't mean we don't play football. It doesn't mean we bail on these other pursuits that we have. And I'm going to unpack that here in a second. What it does mean is that as you seek, how do you serve while you're in the locker room or on the bus or on the plane or at the Orange Bowl or wherever it is, or at your Eagle ceremony, or you're going to Greece and Italy, like wherever you go with whatever group you're part of, as you seek, how do you serve in the midst of that? I mean, I see guys like Sam Nightingale and where's Josh Anderson back here and Doug and all these guys and you girls out there, like you are so involved in stuff, but you love Jesus. And it's obvious. So as we seek, how do we serve while we're doing these things? How do you serve your wrestling team, right? How do you serve the pit crew at musical? Like, how do you serve when you're doing that kind of stuff? How do you serve when you're playing goalie? How do you serve your team? How do you serve? That's what it looks like to seek first, is you put Jesus as of first importance, and then as you go to these other places, you are carrying that with you, knowing that this is going to be my ambition when I'm in St. Louis or Indianapolis or wherever you find yourself. I mean, how can you treasure Jesus first and foremost? What does that look like for you in the things that you do, in the pursuits that you have? See, maybe you need to miss a game or a tournament or a concert or a performance or a show off. Maybe you need to. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's what God's calling you to. Maybe that's also not universal. Maybe you need to be all in while you're here so you can be a better ambassador while you're there. So I'm not going to tell you need to drop everything that's not church. You absolutely need to invest wholeheartedly in the life of the church and in your pursuit of Jesus Christ. Because when you do, as you go out, you take Jesus with you. You make disciples as you go. You all have access to places and people that I never will, simply by what you're involved in and where you go and who you roll with and what circles you run in and how fast your mile time is and all that stuff. Seek first his kingdom. First also doesn't mean once we find Jesus, we stop pursuing him. Go back to verse 22. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. Seeking first his kingdom and his righteousness means that you have a healthy vision of what matters. You have a healthy vision of what to treasure first. Kingdom first means other things don't become treasure. See, my ambition at A&M before I wrote this poem about being a daddy, that's a separate one. But my ambition when I went to college, I went into A&M thinking, I'm going to major in journalism and I'm going to graduate and work for ESPN, the crown jewel of sports broadcasting. That was my ambition. Like that was what my focus was on. This is where I'm going. I am pursuing this and I'm going to be the next great anchor on SportsCenter. I may have my own podcast someday talking about, I don't know, curling, 50K race walk in the Beijing Olympics. I don't know. Like, I'd probably get one of those. But it would be amazing because that was my ambition to do that. When Jesus interrupted my plan and called me into ministry instead, I gladly dropped that ambition because it wasn't treasure to me. It gave me focus. It gave me direction. It gave me something to pursue. But Jesus is first. He is first in my heart. As of first importance, I pursue him. My ambition is the pursuit of the things I treasure, and I treasure Jesus above all. And so he says, you know what? I don't want you to work at ESPN. Okay. What do you want me to do? I want you to hang out with teenagers. Okay. Let's do that. And then here we are, a decade later doing nothing but this. And I love it because I get to see the blessing of God on that call on my life because I treasure him. I treasure him above all else. The ambitions for God, however, if they're to be worthy, can never be modest. Our ambitions for God can't be modest. There's something inherently inappropriate about cherishing small ambitions for God. How can we ever be content that he should acquire just a little more honor in this world? No. Once we are clear that God is king, then we long to see him crowned with glory and honor and accorded his true place, which is the supreme place. We become ambitious for the spread of his kingdom and righteousness everywhere. And I want you to write this down as I'm saying it. When this is genuinely our dominant ambition, there will be no harm in having secondary ambitions, since these will be subservient to our primary ambition and not in competition with it. Do you love photography? Do you love dance? Do you love soccer? Do you love scouts? Do you love debate? Do you love softball? Do you love baseball? Do you love hunting? Do you love these things? Well, then what we're saying is those are great and good, and you should pursue them, provided that your primary genuine ambition is Christ and his kingdom first, so that as you take pictures, how am I going to glorify God with this? As you're playing soccer, how am I going to show the character of Christ in this game? As you are hunting, how am I going to use this as an opportunity to share the gospel with the person that's in that blind with me? As you're on that road trip to Indianapolis with the band, how are you going to use that trip to glorify God and make sure that he is famous? That's what it looks like. It doesn't mean drop all these things like a bad habit. No, that's the essence of discipleship, is as you go, make disciples. But in order to be equipped to do that, you got to come to the armory here. And we fill you up with this word of God and send you out to the places we can't go. It's right and good for you to be connected in these things, because then you can take Jesus to those places. You can make sure that Jesus is famous in cafeterias that we're not allowed in. You can make sure that Jesus is famous in locker rooms that it would be super creepy if we were in. You can make Jesus famous in people's backyards that we are never invited to. You can make Jesus famous at tournaments that are just a little too far away for us to get to. You can make Jesus famous at these competitions. You can make Jesus famous if you got a state ring. You can make Jesus famous if you're a scholarship winner. You can use all of that as a platform to exalt and magnify how good God is and how good he's been and how much you treasure him above all else. That is why we say when this is genuinely our dominant ambition, there will be no harm in having these secondary ambitions. since these will be subservient to our primary ambition and not in competition with it. Lesser ambitions are safe and right, provided that they are not an end in themselves, but the means to a greater end, God's kingdom and righteousness, and therefore to the greatest of all ends, namely God's glory. Seeking first doesn't mean once. If we live for the kingdom first, it doesn't mean we don't play football. The call on our lives is to have healthy eyes to see Jesus as of first importance in all things. We seek because we want more of Jesus, our true treasure, our true ambition. And everything else that we do in this life serves that pursuit of Christ above all.